Hello, welcome to episode 2 of our webcast series, Covendom. Today the subject is going to be initiation. This is my lovely co-host, Levi Rowland.
We got it right this time. She's been studying.
I've been learning.
It's a process.
So we're going to head and give you just, sorry, Christian's distracting us right off the bat.
You need to use
Oh, well, are we echoing?
Are we echoing?
Do you have the chat up?
I do.
We are live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and Crowdcast. I'm going to pull up my YouTube. See, this is going to be annoying.
Yes, and I've got YouTube.
Or not
got
YouTube,
Facebook.
but my Facebook. How do I do this on here?
And if you want to join us, it is crowdcast.io/hexeducation.
No, I can see us now, but how do I see the comments? There we go.
Turn the volume off now.
or not.
What is that? Oh, turn the volume down on the computer.
Yeah. No, I got it there.
Oh, is it on?
Yeah. It's
Christian needs to not be here when we're doing this. Anyway, cool. So I actually have the Facebook comments on here. Hi, Ronaldo, Sinalias. We've got Meg's on there. There's a few people. So I'll try to look at my phone
Hi, Russell.
periodically to see if I have any questions on there. I'm not very good at that.
We will. And if while you're on the YouTube, if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to Hex Education, and also subscribe if you're watching through Crowdcast, because you'll get updates and notifications about when we're going to do our next shows and things like that.
We forgot something.
What did we forget?
Blessed be.
Blessed be. How could we?
So initiation. This is our second series. We're going to talk a lot about initiation today. Hopefully you'll have some questions. We will take on a couple of live callers if there's anyone interested in doing that. Otherwise, we'll try to answer the questions as it comes in chat. On Crowdcast, you can actually send in. No one did except Christian last week. You can send in a question and it'll prompt us for it. But first, Levi's going to pull the tarot card for today.
I am. So last time we used the Hermetic Tarot. Today we're going to
And it
use,
turned out to be
it was the Ten of Swords.
Ten of Swords night, too.
I mean, it wasn't wrong.
Yeah, it wasn't wrong.
I may or may not, like I was explaining to Brian before the show, almost ate it in a public restroom of a nice restaurant in the French Quarter. So
Yeah, we went to dinner afterwards.
things got weird.
Things got weird.
But we used the Hermetic Tarot last time. This time we're using an Italian Marseille deck. So it's lovely. It's based on the French one. Give it a cut. He does a little knock.
3.
The 9 of Cups.
Much better.
Much better. Much better. Probably still going to be some drinking.
Yes, and great for initiation, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, it is actually, though, because it's the sacred number. 3 expressed 3 times.
Sacred to the moon, the
chalice, the
the
sacred
waters,
chalice.
yes, transformative.
So 9 of Cups, people. Your
I
wishes
actually-
coming true.
Oh, Christian, would you hand me my man bag over there? I had something in it for the show.
It's a purse.
It's from London.
It's from London. That makes it less gay. I feel like no. I feel like no.
I'm meant to have that over here. So I was going to do a little show and tell today.
Oh, she brought pops.
I did. I brought a prop. I thought you could do this sometimes too, but I wanted to share this new deck that I got with everyone. You can see it right here. It's called the Marziano.
Marziano.
Marziano. It's Italian, I believe.
Mhm.
Yes. This is actually says it's a tarot deck, but it's not a tarot deck. That's the funny thing. This is considered the ancestor, one of the ancestor decks to the tarot. It's not a tarot deck. In fact, its suits are actually all birds.
Love.
You've got turtle doves. We've got phoenixes.
Gods.
It's the Greek Roman classical gods. This is Neptune on here. So you've got eagles and then
I love this.
doves proper. So this was designed, this deck is recreated based on the descriptions of the deck because there was no physical deck left. So all we had was the descriptions. The original deck was created somewhere like the 1400s.
It's Renaissance, yeah.
Yes,
the earliest tarot decks are Renaissance
And
Italy.
it's an ancestor of the tarot, just like
The Visconti Sforza and
the
everything.
regular playing cards and the tarot evolved from the same place. We don't really truly know when they became divination tools, but they, it wasn't till much later that it started being recorded. And it wasn't until the Rider-Waite deck that we actually, I don't want to forget it, that we actually, now I'll tell you, the deck's cruel. So far, I think it's a very mean deck. It does not play like tarot cards, does not read like tarot cards. It wants to tell you how wrong you are.
I want to tell you how wrong you are all the time.
But anyway, just want
But I can't.
to share that. You do.
I
quite
do, but I
often.
get in trouble.
Yes, sometimes. But anyway, so initiation, let's go ahead and give some of our thoughts about that. So initiation to me, before we get into questions, which I do have my cheat sheet you can't peek at.
Okay, fine.
Initiation. Initiation has been something that has been in my life since I was very young. I think it was Raymond Buckland's Big Blue book. You know, some people call it the Big Blue. Some people call it the Big Blue Abomination. It was, I actually think it's a very good book. It's definitely a beginner's book, but it is, you know, it's not an Alexandrian book. It's not a Gardnerian book, but it's the style of BTW put forward for seekers. So I think it was a very good book for its time. And it is the book that first educated me at the age of 15 that witchcraft was a religion. And it was the first time that the goddess had been, given to me as a concept, as well as, the idea that there was initiation into this priesthood. So it piqued my curiosity. And the more I read about it, the more I wanted to get involved, which of course I continuously did so up to the present day. So initiation has been probably the most powerful spell that I've ever cast. And I do want people to realize that that's exactly what it is. It's an act of magic. It's a big act of magic. And it really is vastly important to Western culture and Western spiritual society, basically as a whole. The occult it goes far beyond just witchcraft. All of our ancestors, it doesn't matter whether you're Celtic, German, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, it really, really doesn't matter what culture you come from. Your ancestors were most likely exposed to what we would now call mystery cults. And many of them had access to initiation within these cults. And it really, really is one of the few threads that was passed on to us via Neoplatonism and Masonic orders, really. We don't know how old the Masonic orders are, but they really were a reintroduction to the concept of initiation in the West. And since that was so well received and the mysteries therein so well received, this has continued to be resurrected. Of course, one might ask what this has to do with witchcraft. Well, witchcraft is a mystery cult within the Western traditions. It's a modern mystery cult within the Western traditions. And all of these mystery cults, whether you're talking about magical orders like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn or the OTO or modern witchcraft, these are all actually connected in one big Western family tree of occultism. So, I think it's extremely important that we remember that this isn't some new concept that people just, whipped out, that this is something that we're actually reclaiming in our heritage, in our ancient religions, and in our magical practices.
Agreed.
So what do you have to say as your intro for initiation?
My intro on initiation. I think there are two very important points I want to make to do an intro to initiation. Number one is when we use the word initiation, we're actually talking about two different things. A small I initiation, if you will, is a ritual that initiates you into a particular group, whether that's British witchcraft or whether that's, the Masonic lodges, not really a religion, but it is a practice. Baptism in Christianity, Orthodox Christianity requires it, right? Those are initiations with a small I. But the big I initiation is different. I was reading, he's not my favorite, esoteric author by any stretch of the imagination, but I was rereading Rudolf Steiner's How to Know Higher Worlds, and he talks about initiation in chapter 1 as this necessary process of becoming, united to something larger than yourselves, experiencing the numinous, what we do in esoteric sort of occult orders. So that's the bigger initiation, and that does not belong just to us, it belongs to all of the spiritual world, but it is still a thing. That's I think a lot of modern spiritual outlooks really want to just completely throw it out entirely, and I'm not so sure that's possible. So I think that the larger initiation is something much more universal, whereas each group is going to have its very unique spin on initiation that I think is important to remember. And then the second point I'll make about initiation is it really does separate what I like to call the state cult from the mysteries.
Yes.
Right? Like historically...
It's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah. Historically, every culture kind of had its state religion, whether it's the Greeks with Olympus and the gods and everything in the state public rituals, Rome with the constant college of pontifices and everything that they had there, standard Hindu doctrine, standard Judaism or whatever. And then there's always a group of mystics, right, that sort of seek something else. It's Eleusis in Greece. It's the cult of Magna Mater in Rome. It's Tantra in Hinduism and Buddhism. It's Kabbalah in Judaism. It's, people like Jacob Boehme in Protestantism and people like Saint Teresa d'Avila in Catholicism. But those are always the mysteries. And I think we are searching more for that. And people drawn to the occult are too. The state cult's not going to cut it for us. Public sort of standard issue religion is not going to work for us. And if you're like that, then you're probably in some way sort of itching towards initiation.
Well, it's, we were having I think it was our last ritual. Afterwards, we sort of have a bit of a soiree, and somebody who works for us came in and I had made some sort of comment about Instagram witches. We hear a lot about that lately. I did a makeup tutorial. Girl, you're wearing 10 pounds of makeup. It ain't attractive. Stop.
Okay, sometimes, you beat that mug a little bit. Get
anyway, and I don't know what it has to do with witchcraft. Anyway,
I agree with.
They said, well, things are changing, and I think he was trying to be clever, and he said, the old traditions, they may not like it, the established traditions may not like it, but maybe this is a new kind of witchcraft, maybe things are changing. And my response was, there's nothing new under the sun. What Levi just said, if you go to the Celts, the Celtic tribes, everyone within those tribes practiced some sort of magic, worshipped the gods, probably partook in certain rituals, but they were not what we would now call druids. The druids were distinct.
Nope, it's a caste.
They were separate. Yep. They were initiated into something separate. And, they had their own function within that society. So there's always been layers to ancient religion, whether it's state religion or we put it in the sense like today, you've got a lot of people who are practicing various forms of modern paganism or various forms of the occult or various forms of magic. And they're not initiated, and they may not want to get initiated, and that's perfectly fine. There's nothing new under the sun. There have always been initiates and non-initiates. We don't think everyone should be initiated.
No.
Just like we don't think every Celt should have been a druid. They would have been in trouble in battle if that would have been the case.
Yeah, not everybody can be putting on the robes and learn how to write. Somebody could keep the corn from getting stolen.
Exactly. So, I think that... very good point. I like how you say, today in our, we don't have a state religion. I think some people want to make it a state religion, but we don't have a state religion at all in America. Thankfully, we have separation between church and state, which some people also forget, So I don't know. We don't have any questions yet. If anyone wants to send questions or volunteer to be one of our first call-ins, please let us know. I'm going to go ahead and ask Levi a question.
Please do. Ready and waiting.
Levi, why did you seek initiation?
Money, sex, popularity. No, I'm kidding. Because it's not going to bring you a lot of that all the time.
Stop stealing my reason.
I knew he was going to bring it up, so I cut him off at the knees. Because I think, going back to my example, the state cult, which I'm using as a metaphor here, is just not going to cut it for me. It never did. And initiation, because one of the things I think we might have messed up a little bit here with is we really haven't told the people watching, what do we mean by initiation? So I'm going to start there. Why did I seek it? Because I realized what it would mean for me. Initiation is for those people who get to that point where your rituals, observing the Sabbaths, if you're into paganism or witchcraft, or maybe meditation, if that's your thing.
Which are not the same thing, paganism and witchcraft.
No, they're not the same thing. We'll get into that. But it's not working anymore. You need something more. You want to see the reason behind. You want to pull the veil off. Isis veiled is beautiful, but you want to see her unveiled. This is the same thing when Christians throw themselves into mysticism and philosophy and whatnot.
What's better than a dead Christian?
Oh my God, what?
A screaming one.
That's hateful. I don't agree with that. We love
you
you,
said
Christian.
lions. You were talking about lions.
Sorry,
made me think of it.
Just kidding.
We're joking. We love
Protestant.
Christians.
Somebody did ask me a quick question that I'll answer. What did Levi say was the Protestant alternative to the state religion? I just gave an example of a very famous Protestant Lutheran mystic, Jakob Boehme, Boehme, very well known. Swedenborg would count as that too. He was a Protestant. Kierkegaard. Not a mystic, but a good philosopher. But that's what we mean by initiation. It is when you decide to take that leap, to jump into the void and just hope that something catches you, whether it's God or the Dharma or whatever it is. But it is a choice to go beyond the state cult. Like, you want something deeper. You want it to be within, without, as above, so below, all around, cosmic, real. And to me, it separates those from who approach our religious traditions as a hobby versus those who approach them as an actual practice.
A vocation. Yeah.
A vocation, exactly.
And it's not a we're better than you thing. It's just that we are.
Okay,
anyway,
we're down. I'm not endorsing this.
He's not endorsing it.
It's not a competition.
It's no fun, Drink some more of that port. Come on.
I've drunk plenty of port.
Blessed be. You can't not do it.
I can't not do it if he's...
Blessed be.
It's like church all over again. And
Blessed be.
Blessed be, Brian.
Blessed be the fruit of thy womb. Not yours. But
That's
anyway.
from the Hail Mary.
It's time for you to ask me. Were you done? Did you answer your question?
I did, I think.
I got bored.
Somebody did on YouTube ask a question about spirit initiation. So love that we're watching the questions on YouTube. Remember, subscribe to Hex Education.
Well, there's a very usually speaking, and you can add on because I don't know. If you guys want to ask one of us specifically a question, that's fine. I'm long-winded. There's a lot that comes up about how do you know the gods can't initiate you, or how do you know why do you need initiation from a person, or yada yada yada. The ritual of initiation that we're talking about has traditionally always been passed down from initiates to other initiates. You finally get the question, well, who initiated the first initiate? Well, we don't really know, but how Patricia Crowther said it is, guess whoever coined the word witch is who initiated the first witch, and kind of a play on
Which
words
would be
there.
The church.
Possibly, we can get into that. I think that I think that there are other initiations, spiritual initiations, that are personal. But you cannot expect other human beings to acknowledge that, nor should they. If you have an initiation that's through spirit or through a spirit process, whether it's gods or, whatever you think it is, or you have this vast experience and you feel it's initiation, that's very personal. And I'm certainly not saying it's not real, but you cannot expect other human beings to acknowledge it because it's not a part of a traceable experience. If we believed every experience everyone in the occult world said they had,
some of the things these people say, shit.
You've got to be skeptical. So that's
Even in our own
personal.
tradition.
If you have a personal initiation, which I have, I think had personal initiations in a way.
Same.
They're personal. They're not. They're not for anyone else. So they do
I had a
happen.
Catholic one,
But they don't make you a priest. They don't make you a priestess. They don't make you a witch. It's your own personal experience. Just like, we understand the labels are interchangeable, but I think spirits, whatever we mean by that, I think that there are entities that can be introduced to you, or you can introduce yourself, or there are magical things that happen. Entering into a certain astral plane for the first time. Some people might consider that an initiation.
This is where Brian tells us he was initiated by aliens.
I was not initiated by aliens. I was initiated by the seventh higher master from the ninth plane of hell.
Big fan.
It's personal. It's not really
So
about anyone
good.
else.
So good.
The initiation we're
friends.
primarily talking about tonight, and we did want to take it beyond just the bounds of a witchcraft initiation, is witchcraft initiation, which that story, assumedly, there's 3 different ways we can look at witchcraft. Add on if you think I'm wrong here.
Okay.
One is the pre-Christian, ideas. Then we have what may or may not have occurred during Christianity.
The witch trials and all that, yeah.
Medieval
The mythos.
folklore, that whole idea, whether or not anything was going on, that's, very much up to debate, and we should talk about that, and what initiation might look like, or what sources we have for that. And then, of course, modern witchcraft. Modern witchcraft started as an initiatory mystery cult. The word witch.
The revival did, absolutely.
Yes, the word witch or witchcraft existed as a historical idea of hysteria and persecution and fiction fantasy. There was no one walking around calling themselves a witch in most, to most people. There were some obscure circumstances where people might have said witchy woman or witchery or something like that.
Yeah.
That was in certain places, and I definitely don't take that away from them. But as far as in the West, as far as we're concerned, really it started with Gerald Gardner in the New Forest Coven in England. And the question that has to be asked there was Gerald Gardner actually initiated into the New Forest Coven? I think he was. I absolutely believe he was initiated into witchcraft in the New Forest Coven. Then the question becomes, who the hell were they? Where did they get it from? And the truth of the matter is we don't really know. We've got ideas, and different people have different theories. But since about the 1930s, something has indeed been going on to the present day. And this initiation has continued up to the present day, and it's being practiced, and people are being initiated into Gardnerian and Alexandrian craft, which are all from the root of that tree in the New Forest.
Mm-hmm.
And they're being initiated into that system that was brought forward through Gerald Gardner.
Absolutely.
So
not to interrupt at all, but there's a couple questions in YouTube and the chat that sort of tie into everything we've been talking about. And I want to hit on them because we've been answering the spirit one and kind of went off track there, which it was good information. But somebody just asked, hold on, there's quite a few.
We're too sober.
We get there. We get there. I know you. We're not going to stay that way long. Okay, so somebody is talking about people who were initiated into other witchcraft groups. Like basically, we understand, trust us, we both know that there are lots and lots of witchcraft groups out there that descend and borrow a lot from British traditional witchcraft, from Gardner and Valiente.
I don't think there's lots of groups that descend.
Not descend, wrong word, that borrow from.
Most all modern witchcraft in some way owes a tribute to the original what we now call Gardnerian.
Yeah.
They didn't call it Gardnerian, just like Alex didn't originally call his witchcraft Alexandrian. They all called it witchcraft because there was no competition at that point in time. They were just all practicing the religion of witchcraft. Anyone who's been initiated into anything is on the path of initiation, and that may lead to all sorts of things because you've knocked on the door.
In different paths.
You've asked. I was originally initiated through 3 degrees of a non-proclaimed witchcraft tradition, meaning it's not popularly known. It was Gardnerian in style. The practice was very Gardnerian. Their lineage was not. But I was very young. And I think that, in that tradition, even though it doesn't trace back to Gardner, it did have a lineage, and it had a little bit of a power bank because of the different priests and priestesses that had passed it forward in that tradition. I believe I was already on the path of initiation. I was initiated into witchcraft through that, but it's not a full-on priesthood. It was an initiation into a coven, really, right? So
it goes back to what we're saying.
Something doesn't become a tradition until it has actually become a tradition. So any witchcraft tradition, like Alexandrian and Gardnerian, are global, So when it was the New Forest Coven, when it was the Bricketwood Coven, when it was just, the Manchester Coven or whatever, those weren't traditions, they were covens. They became full-on traditions because they became movements. So having a coven and having your own made-up tradition doesn't really make it a tradition, it makes it your traditions. And being initiated into a coven doesn't necessarily make you a part of a broader priesthood, it makes you an initiate of that coven. It could evolve into that. And I think the thing people should probably stop and think about, since we all assumedly believe in magic and power, is that the proof's in the pudding with Gardnerian and Alexandrian. It has succeeded. It has passed on. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't there, if the juice wasn't there, why is it still going on? Whereas you've got 100 books, the Norse, one-eyed tradition, and you never hear about it again. You don't know anyone who's practicing it. It's not really a tradition. Somebody wrote a book about it, or, I've developed some of my own magical systems. Doesn't make it a tradition. It's just systems that I've worked with.
Yeah.
And,
it doesn't make them invalid at all.
No, not at all. And 100 years from now, who knows what we'll be saying? 100 years from now, the real witches might be calling themselves something else.
Totally.
I don't know. Did I answer the question?
What's your
answer
hit on
to
it?
the
I
question?
think what I want to say is we're still sort of kind of almost looking at the real issue here, it goes back to what I said in the beginning. Initiation means two things. I think a lot of people are really focused on initiation into said group, like the OTO, Alexandrian Witchcraft, whatever. Yes, we are talking about that, but we are talking about a much larger concept here, which is initiation into a esoteric mystery path. And this exists in Tantra. That, like I said, I'm not going to go through the whole laundry list again. It's global. It's been a thing in the human race for millennia, right? That there is this thing, right? The mystics. So that's what we're really talking about. So I'm going to answer another question in the chat right here. Somebody brought up Instagram witches that they like, right? Somebody in the chat. See, you wanted to give you a shout out.
I like some of them too.
Yeah, love them. Here's the
Some
big
of
thing
them.
though. I'm usually the one that disagrees with Brian and tries like not to be so, should we stride it? But I'm going to be a little strident on this one, and maybe unpopular. So apologies in advance.
Never apologize.
We're not that wicked, Brian. But here's my one probably unpopular opinion here. If you want, because somebody used the word accessible, right? Well, they make witchcraft more accessible.
Well, what are we doing right now?
We're doing something very different, in my opinion.
Yes, but we're still making the truth accessible.
True. But the concept that witchcraft, as I understand it, and within the European religious framework, could be accessible is an oxymoron to me. I don't think it is accessible. I don't think the mysteries are accessible. I actually think we need to shut the door, not open it. I think we live in a culture absolutely drenched in openness. We live our whole lives on social media. Everything's for sale. Gross. I just don't care for it. If you want the real mysteries, you're going to have to work for it.
I'm for sale.
Wow. Whoring himself out for the Lord. God damn it. But no, all joking aside, no, I don't think it should be accessible. I'm sorry. I don't.
I'd say, I will say the one thing I do like about Instagram is platform, because I do use it. It's technically, I guess I'm an Instagram witch. I just only have like 500 followers. I haven't been doing it very long. Pictures can be worth 1,000 words. So I do agree, especially in this instant culture, that there is a new generation that responds to that, and that some of them might go on to actually read a book because of it. But I think the reason why people, get so down on the Instagram witches, most of all, or the Tumblr witches, is because it's like, how many pictures of a crystal can you see?
It's
and it's
repetitive.
all there is, and I mean,
There's no training either, no work.
I caught myself trolling a YouTuber, a YouTube Instagram witch, and she had like 60,000 followers on her YouTube.
Yep.
And she was an idiot, and I can say that because I'm not going to say who she is. She is an idiot. Everything she was saying was idiotic. She had a huge following. She looked like she was, age is just a number. You can be 15 and brilliant. You can be 60 and moronic. But, she was awfully young, and she, and kudos to her for having 60,000 followers. I mean, I'll give her that. I probably, if she had half a mind to take this seriously, think she was an impressive creature because she's accomplished something. And I like people who can actually accomplish things and not just,
talk about it. Yeah.
Talk about it. So, who knows that it can't lead to something better, so I'm not knocking it completely. It's just that having 60,000 followers doesn't make you a witch. Some of the best witches I know have no followers at all, and they're good witches. So, and I mean good in the sense that they know their work, they know their art, they know their craft. And, these people don't. I'm sorry, they just don't. Just because you know the correspondence of some crystals.
But I mean, it goes back to what I said before. How amazingly mysterious and powerful and religiously transformative is something going to be if it is for sale on social media?
Yeah.
Like, it's not. And people hate that. They do. We live in this world where we're destroying the old. It's very futuristic, very postmodern. I'll pass, thank you. It's just not my thing. Like, if you really want it, you'll work for it. Anything that's worth
You owe me a
anything,
question.
you'll work for
You
it.
haven't asked me a question.
I'm not asking. Let me make sure we don't have one here. We do. Let's. I know we're important and we have great questions, but I want to answer people's
Because
questions
I'm not getting
too.
any on Facebook. I don't have any
So
questions. I've looked.
I've got two that I think are really important. The first one is on YouTube, and it's what is your thoughts on the difference between a dedication as opposed to initiation, and should people who are thinking about moving down the path dedicate themselves to the gods before becoming initiated? This is a very popular thing.
Yeah, I actually
like
have
Sayak's Wicca,
strong opinion in it.
Raymond says this. Yeah.
I think that the authors, early on, they used to say self-initiation, which you can't self-initiate into the craft. You can't self-initiate. By most definitions of initiation, you cannot self-initiate. Isn't that true? Mostly
I have a very,
language,
I won't cut you off, but yeah, it's not a,
yeah, you
like,
can't.
historically, there was no concept of that.
However, the authors who started saying dedication, they were actually smart and obviously semi-literate. So I think that you can self-dedicate. I think there's nothing wrong with that.
Agreed.
In fact, I'd encourage it. I'd also encourage that if you want initiation or you want teachers, that you ask the gods to help facilitate that.
Agreed. I would too.
You do not have to be initiated to work with the gods. You do not have to be initiated to work magic. So if it's in your heart and you're reaching out, they will respond. I self-dedicated before I was initiated, and I asked for initiation of the gods. I did the ritual from Doreen Valiente's book.
Okay, yeah, I know which one you're talking
Witchcraft
about.
Tomorrow, that has the abracadabra, that whole thing.
Yeah.
I did that one when I was very young. It was my self-dedication. So I don't, I don't believe in self-initiation, but there's nothing wrong with self-dedication. Whether you choose to use that or not as a word, you're communicating with the divine. They're either going to listen or they're not. You can pray to our gods, you can invoke our gods. They're either going to show up or they're not. It's not up to us whether they show up.
I mean, we are religious.
They are going to either show up or they're not going to show up.
And shout out to Earthsinger100 on YouTube who said something I totally agree with. Is dedication is one thing. It's you say it's a vow to study and strive, whereas initiation would be equivalent in Christianity to holy orders, to ordaining. And agreed.
Who said this?
Their screen name is Earthsinger.
I don't know who you are as a singer, but spot on.
I mean, it's true. Initiation is a priesthood, and that's what mystery cults were all about.
Yeah.
As opposed to, and the other thing I'll say is, here's the one thing I said at Hexfest one
We've
time.
got a question.
We do. It's very deep, so I wanted to answer his first. Yeah, I'm looking at Christian because it's going to be fun to talk about. Somebody asked a very good one, but a very controversial one. But before, I know.
I already know who this person is, but I'm happy to answer.
I know.
The question.
Before we answer that one, I do want to say something I said at Hexfest one time about initiation, which is this: this whole self-initiation thing is impossible. Let me ask you a question: can you fall? You can love yourself. Self-love's beautiful. It's important,
Yes.
right? But can you fall in love? Can you experience true human love by yourself? No, you can't. And I'm getting a masturbation signal over here, and I'm
I
rejecting
don't know
it
if we can say masturbation.
because I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the experience of falling in love with another person. Can
Well, what
you?
if you're
No.
a narcissist?
Well, then you're not ready for initiation. If you cannot find something outside of yourself that matters.
No, what he's saying is actually very true. Initiation
The
is
other-
not a solitary practice. You cannot. I mean, the term self-initiation is
It's like
ridiculous.
falling in love.
You can dedicate. You
Must be
can,
another person.
It's not initiation.
Your ego must be reflected back at you in another mind, or you
Exactly.
will never understand the mysteries.
That's the other
Period.
reason. Well, I don't want. I was going to go down the rabbit hole, but let's.
We do have a very
I'll
good
get
question.
this one if you want to get the next one.
I'm sure you would like to get this one. So we're going to hit start answering, which means that anybody who's watching later, you can go exactly
I mean, you can
to
add
the
on.
moment.
I already
So-
addressed this question with this individual, so
I'm going to
happy
hit start
do it
answering,
here.
and then we're going to read the question. So the question that I'll ask Brian is this person's question, which is, what about the initiation of the mentally ill?
Mental illness is a very vast subject. So it depends. What I would say is if the individual has control of their mental illness and it's not a mental illness, would I initiate a schizophrenic? No. Never in a million years. Doesn't mean I don't like schizophrenics.
I think we might have already done that.
But I wouldn't. If there's levels of I think it would be harmful to the individual. What you must
It's
understand
a kindness.
is that this has nothing to do with political correctness. I'm an occultist. I believe initiation can make a sane person insane. I think initiation can stop. I think an initiation can be very traumatic at times. I think it can destroy some individuals. I think it builds them up as well. I wouldn't want that on my conscience. And I don't think that the Vatican would support taking a mentally ill person on that level and making them a Catholic priest or a nun either.
No.
So I'm not going to apologize for not
There's a
bringing
psyche,
someone
though.
into a priesthood who is not
In the Catholic
mentally
Church.
capable of doing the job. To be a priest or priestess, you not only have to be able to work in harmony with others under sometimes immensely stressful situations, but you are expected to facilitate things to people. Now, if somebody's got depression issues and they
Anxiety,
can
any of that,
handle it, or
that's-
anxiety,
no
or whatever,
problem.
and they can control it, that's up to the coven. I mean, at the end of the day, it's actually up to the coven leader. It's not up to me. I'm saying what I would do. it's not something I think that's heavily encouraged, but it depends on the level of mental illness.
Yeah.
Likewise, when I was, I probably wouldn't hire somebody to work for us who had Tourette syndrome because it just wouldn't work in the store. I wouldn't want someone, working for us that does that. I wouldn't take a blind person to a shooting range. I mean, I think generally, and I'm not accusing this person of this, but I think a lot of times people ask these questions because they're trying to get you to say something that's going to make you look bad.
Yeah.
I am not apologizing. I would not give a blind person a gun. Sorry. So mental illness is a very vast thing. So it just depends on their level of level of mental illness. But as far as initiation is concerned, bottom line is, even though Alexandrians and Gardnerians may have a similar consensus on some things, it is up to each of the coven leaders. So the high priestess and the high priest and the elders decide who's going to get initiated of their coven. I think most would be unlikely to intentionally bring someone in with a severe mental illness, but I cannot speak for everyone. Does that answer the question? Anything to add?
The only thing I would add is two things. Number one, this is not an act where we're saying that there's something wrong with those people.
Doesn't mean I wouldn't be your friend.
No. And it's just not what it's about. It's about safety, and it's about being kind to the person, actually.
Yes, it is.
Because I think there's some situations where taking somebody who might not be stable in their life and might not be dealing with it in a very healthy way and putting them in an even more egregiously difficult situation, which I think is a cruelty. So that's my big part of it, is it's all about kindness.
I'm not going to take someone with severe claustrophobia and put them in a coffin for 3 hours.
Or bind someone who's terrified of it.
Yeah,
it's just
there are things that I'm not prepared to do from my own conscience, and I don't think initiation is for the faint of heart. And I have seen it take people and raise them up and crush them. Not because that's what initiation does, but because that's what that person is going through. Because it doesn't end. It's not just a ritual. The moment you decide you're going to be initiated, I think you've started it.
Agreed.
And there's an old story. Do we have any other? Well, let's ask this other question before I get to...
Yeah, I'm going to click, make sure that we let people know that we're finished with that topic. But a great question, Camille. I agree. It's an important one to ask. So our next question right here is
hello,
an interesting one.
Karen, blessed be.
Yes, hey. I see you. Blessed be.
Blessed be.
We have another question here. With so many fakes in the world, how do you validate a coven's lineage?
It's easier now than it used to be in America. Here's the thing. In England, in Britain, they all know each other pretty much nowadays. So it's pretty easy to just ring up the coven and ask. They're not so big on lineage because they'll just say, where do you hail from? What coven are you from? And they'll bring somebody up that knows. They don't need to see the pedigree. Here in the United States, we're very big into who initiated who and pedigree because we have to be. This is a big country. Huge. And to be honest with you, most of it doesn't have initiates. We tend to be more on the coastal cities. Now, obviously we don't have a, tracking device, but we have had forums and websites that were for this. So our coven, for instance, we're so publicly known that it's just known where we come from. However, if you've got one that's not, what I will tell you is you ask them for a vouch. Meaning somebody, you go to somebody you do know, whether it's, especially nowadays, you've got all these Facebook groups, you've got seeker groups, you've got things. Initiates aren't going to lie to you. Even if they don't like them, they'll still say, yeah, they're legitimate. They might say something negative about them, but they're going to tell you they're legitimate, or not. Or they don't think so. Anyone who has a shady story to their origins, they're probably shady. There's actually no reason. I could tell you we could all tell you exactly where we come from, and we're open.
If they're afraid to tell you, that's a problem.
Yeah, I think that, it's not supposed to be a secret. Now, there may be initiates that are secrets, but in this day and age, it's pretty easy to ascertain whether a group is real or not. And I hate to say there are a lot of fake ones out there.
There are.
There just are. There are lots of if you go onto Witchvox or whatever, there's lots of groups saying they're things that they're just quite frankly not. But it's really not hard to find out. First of all, they should have their lineage. They should have the Book of Shadows. They should know how to answer certain key questions. And nowadays, because of communication via Skype, social media, other platforms, the initiates really do kind of have a lasso on it. I think there was sort of a period, in the 80s, especially maybe early 90s, where there might have been people we were like, we're not sure. So we had to ask lots of questions and, ask to see their Book of Shadows and things like that. But the reality situation is 9 times out of 10, if they can't tell you their lineage and there's no one alive who could validate it, it's because they're lying. It's like the grandmother story. Go on Facebook. Almost everyone, in these groups, you'll find like 20 people who are all hereditary witches. They're not really, are they? So, your grandma hung a horseshoe.
So
we get it.
You ask, you find out, you follow. And
it's not hard to find out.
It's really not.
There are too many groups.
It seems like it is from the outside looking in, but once you kind of join the world, it's not at all.
Perfect example. I had somebody ask me, there was a store owner, and she says she's Alexandrian. I'm not going to name the name, obviously, but will you find out for me? Which I agreed, so it put the burden on me. And so I approached the woman and I said, I've been asked for a vouch for you. I've been told you said you're Alexandrian. Oh, I'm Godgenarian Alexandrian in the OTO in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And I'm a progressive witch. And I said, okay, you're initiated in all those things. No. Were you initiated Alexandrian? No, but I knew Janet and Stuart when they were writing progressive witchcraft, so I'm a progressive witch.
Yeah.
You do understand that doesn't make you Alexandrian. They didn't initiate you Alexandrian. They didn't initiate you anything. Progressive witchcraft is just a book. The person basically eventually yielded to my inquiries and admitted they were not any of these things and said they would stop claiming it. 6 months later, I got the message that they were still claiming it, so I had a different conversation with said individual, which I don't normally play the role of police, but in this I became invested because she'd already told me she wasn't Alexandrian. And 6 months later, I found out she's still telling people and charging them for classes.
And that's a big red flag.
And I said, stop this now or I will put you on blast. Well, we haven't heard any more claims since.
Yeah.
And I don't feel bad about it at all. Sometimes you have to proudly put on the badge.
Well, it's also protecting something that's...
Yes, and a person I cared about had asked me because
a lot of hucksters.
She was genuinely interested in becoming Alexandrian, and this was a person close to her that if she was real, could have been a way to do it. But she wasn't. She was a liar. So.
Okay. So our next question from Jill. Do you think the popularity of social media and shiny object syndrome is creating more title seekers than those actually wanting to do the work of initiating into particular systems? Oh my God, yes.
What do you mean by shiny?
It means like that whole thing of collecting, right? Like I want this because I saw it. I want this because I saw it.
I'm teasing. I was making a joke about my necklace.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to hit the start answer button, but her question is about people...
Let you take this.
Yeah, seeking title, seeking collecting or whatever. I think it's actually destroying it. Like utterly, it has ruined so many people's paths to spirituality right now. This absolute obsession with, I saw this, so I'm this now, and I saw this, so I'm this now. And it's just... I don't even understand the point of it, to be honest. And when people try to explain it to me, they say, well, I want to be eclectic. I want to be able to pull from everything. Okay, yeah. But if you don't have a root system, if you don't have something that you're going to go back to and actually work on, what are you doing? Like you're going to...
Karen, do my tits look all right?
This is what I deal with every day. This is a good moment for all of us just to take in.
She said they look
initiation brings to the table.
Yeah.
But no, that's my point is absolutely, Jill. I think it's caused a huge problem. I think nobody wants to do the work. They just want to look a certain way. It's an aesthetic. I mean, I love a good aesthetic, but no thanks.
I actually really, really appreciate nice things. I don't want more choices. I want nicer things.
Same.
So the aesthetics are great to me. I love beautiful women. I love beautiful men. I believe that occultists in the craft should look as beautiful as they possibly can. I love beautiful things. I love beautiful rituals. Beauty is important in Alexandrian craft. However, if there's no substance behind it, then
what's the point? What you doing?
We want substance. We don't want just beauty.
I want it to be pretty, but I want it to be meaningful too. Why do I have to choose between the two? The choices, by the way, are not ugly or ugly and meaningful or pretty and vapid.
No.
You can be both.
Levi and
Have you been to the
are
Vatican?
best-
Have you seen Notre Dame?
It's
We're not
gorgeous.
best friends. Have you seen, like, we barely acquaintances. Have you?
Blessed be.
God damn it. Every time. Blessed be, Brian.
Blessed be.
And Karen.
Good answer, I think. I don't think the aesthetics are destroying the craft. I think that
Most of them are bad.
I'd rather see good aesthetics. I'm assuming this person means good aesthetics.
Yeah.
I'm assuming this person means the hot Instagram witches. You know what I think was
ones.
destroying the craft?
No.
Piggins in the park.
Oh, I knew we were gonna
Piggins
go
in the
here.
park with their sundresses and their
It's fine to wear a
need-
sundress,
Their need
ma'am.
to be accepted in some sort of sad counterculture or whatever. I think that was destroying the aesthetic of the craft. I want Patricia Crowther with her perfect curls and her perky breasts and her cool occult objects.
I kinda want that too, to be
I
honest.
don't want some strange man with a dirty beard with birds living in it, wielding around a giant branch,
Not that we're attacking
proclaiming that
anyone.
he's Kernanos and he's going to rescue some fair maiden who couldn't stand the smell of his breath.
It's like, we all know this to be a truth. Go big or go home. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to, do you really want to be in that circle where nobody's really working because it's all about how you feel? And, well, this looked good to me for a second. Great. I mean, you're going to go home and feel very unchanged by
Or
that.
like going to a spring equinox ritual and having a bit of pomegranate arbor
Arbor
mist.
mist,
Wasn't
like-
this the first? And bubble wands.
I mean, I've been to so many
Now I'm
public
being
rituals.
mean.
He is being mean. But I've been to so many public rituals where I'm like,
bubble wands.
if I was God, I wouldn't show up to this. Like, would you? God, the food alone. Like, and it's not about money before we get that comment, because that's what people always tell me. It's not about money. It's about effort. You can't afford the flowers? Honey, go pick the flowers. You bought a cheap wine, decant it into a beautiful decanter you got at the Goodwill. It's about effort. If you are going to show up with no effort put into it, I'm not going to take it seriously either.
If all you can afford is arbor mist for your chalice, you should not be holding a public ritual.
Now, I disagree with that just a little, but I think if you can't put forth the effort to create beauty, you shouldn't be holding a public ritual.
Shouldn't be holding.
It's not about the money; it's about effort.
No, but I don't think that people who can't afford something beyond what is a bottle of arbor mist
$1,
cost?
$2, I don't know.
Like, how much could that cost? Like, seriously, you think
I
the
see
same
what you
thing.
mean.
You're being nice.
I see what you mean, though. What he's
Blessed
saying
be.
is if you're, I'm not doing this.
Blessed be. He's
Blessed
being nice
be.
still. Oh, it's okay if you're poor. It is okay if you're poor, but you shouldn't be facilitating some sort of occult ritual for masses amounts of people if you can't wield the fertility necessary. Money is our fertility now. It just is.
In America, late stage capitalism.
Well, in the West,
Yeah.
it is. I've always said, do what you love. If your goal is to be an actual farmer and to have that great harvest, and it's not about money and that's your harvest, or if your goal is that you're a painter and your goal is to make beautiful art, fertility can come in other forms.
Yeah, it's not always
But
about
we
wealth.
really can't discredit the fact that money for most people is the measure of what they're doing in the world or not doing. So
I'm not saying that's great or anything, but it's the world. I get what you mean.
I don't want to put your profession out there, so I shouldn't say that. But there are professions out there that are extremely important and noble to society that don't necessarily pay a lot of money. So I agree with Levi, it's not really about money, but at the same time, I discredit the idea that money doesn't matter. If you cannot afford to go buy yourself a Happy Meal at McDonald's, you're probably not actually practicing magic because you should be able to.
But that's...
Or your magic's
wording
not
irks me
working.
here. But I see your point,
Right.
but I would
I'm getting off topic.
I already had done answering. We're good. I would nuance it a little differently. It's not about if you can
I
make
think I'm getting buzzed too.
yourself some, you think? If you can make yourself some grandiose thing, that's not what I
Yes.
would say necessarily. I agree with you actually in theory.
You have to just understand I also am a huge Egyptian fan. So I'm like, I've got
Gold altars everywhere.
pyramid.
There's somebody actually, I'm guilty of this too. I am a sucker for beautiful aesthetic over the top things. I'm
Me
sorry.
too.
I just am. And one of the people who works at Hex one time was like, I feel like your aesthetic is you walk into a Catholic church and you say, yeah, I know they killed a lot of people, but have you seen this wainscoting? It's like this crown molding's all original. It's like
He
that's
threw holy water on me in
Sintra, Portugal.
Portugal. We went into a church. I was really angry. He exorcised me.
I did. It was a pretty church, though.
Exorcised.
But
And
no.
you could smell the dead in that church.
He's had a lot.
No, they were buried under the ground, and
I
you
know.
could smell the musty death of this church.
Tomb,
It
yeah.
literally was a what would you say? Not necromancy, but there
the
were
word?
dead things in there. I was trying to conjure a word.
Yeah, conjure a good word. It's like, the French would say cadaverique, like a
Yes,
cadaver.
it was a temple of the dead. That was. I think that there's definitely a death essence in some forms of Catholicism.
Oh, yeah, it's a death cult in some ways.
Can be.
Can be. Not in its nature. It's not.
always.
It's a resurrection cult. But
We've got a wonderful church here. I always want to call it St. Jude's. It's that one with the giant Jude statue.
it's not St. Jude's.
No,
It's
it's
Our Lady
not.
of Guadalupe now.
That has that grotto to Mary for the homeless.
It's beautiful.
That is filled with life.
So is this shrine to St. Anne on Ursulines. If you've ever been there, you're in New Orleans, the shrine to St. Anne is incredible.
Oh,
So we have a question. I'm going to ask it. Would you ever step outside of the Coven's authority to perform spells or spiritual work that the Coven did not agree with?
do you want to answer that?
Sure.
No, I'm
Because
going to
he
let
is
him
the
answer
authority.
it because I'm high priest, so
Yeah.
don't really have to ask anyone's
Yeah, he can do whatever the hell he wants.
permission.
Not true. But there are limits. There are limits. You know there are limits. It's just like a grinder profile. It's like list the limits. All joking aside,
Limits.
would I step outside of the Coven's authority? Here's the thing. Would it damage... People always assume that we have some sort of hierarchical, elitist, slavish mentality, that we're culty or whatever. We are. But not really. We respect... I mean, Alexandrians adore freedom. That's why Alex and Maxine did half the shit they did, was to liberate, to believe in freedom in the craft. So a lot of people ask this question, I think, with the assumption of, oh, you can't do your own thing, or you wouldn't be able to do what you want because your coven or your priest would tell you not. Okay, that's not how I see it at all. Here's how I see it and how I'd answer this question. I wouldn't do it because anything that my religion hates or does not agree with or doesn't want me to do is usually something that is probably not good. It's probably something that's going to damage me. Like, they don't want me to be a grave robber. They don't want me to be, out here sacrificing animals left and right. They don't want me to do a lot of things that I think that if I engaged in, it's not going to hurt the tradition. It's not going to hurt the coven. The mysteries are eternal. It's going to hurt me. It's going to hurt me spiritually. I'm going to be the one that's screwed in the end. So would I step outside of the coven to do something that they didn't agree with? Probably not. But not because of some slavish authority to Brian or anyone else or my high priestess, but simply because I agree with what my religion teaches. So I want to respect it because it fills me with life and it grants me wonderful things and continues me down my road. Why would I break free from that if it's working?
I hate it when I look at myself over here because it makes me make weird faces, and I want to be pretty for all of you.
I feel like you've been drinking more than me tonight.
No. I actually want to clarify that with my statement. As a high priest, I'll say, and the way that I teach, my coven members are not slaves to anyone.
Only sexually.
So they actually often have their own systems of magic, and they do work on their own. Now, yes, there's certain training. There's things we say that you shouldn't do, or we give the advice. Oh, but they're witches, aren't they? So some of them are going to be naughty, and they're going to do what they like. I did. I still do.
Shocked.
I break all my own rules, they say. But I think that, here's the thing. This is witchcraft. So my coven, I trust them. I've got good witches. They are all very exceptional in both ends of their life. We've got authors and store owners and readers and artists and, most of them are just fantastic. There's always room for some growth, but that's
that in there.
That's
doing great.
true
You
of
can do better.
everyone. So no, I don't think that the coven really actually. Our coven doesn't, and Alexandrians don't tend to hold that sort of control. I've heard there are some lines within Initiatory Craft where they are more controlling. We are not one of them. Freedom is, freedom is important to us.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's a good question. I think, I think we answered it. I think you can, technically, but a lot of the practices that you would be stepping outside to do, I don't think are spiritually beneficial to begin with. Honestly, I just don't. Because we're not that restrictive. Like, we're sexually open. We're not very prudish. We're not very moralistic in many ways. So if you're...
What are morals except for intent.
Yeah. Well,
We don't believe that you should do anything with the intent of creating harm. And a lot of people poo-poo the witch's creed, because it's it sounds like, because there's so many books that say this is the witch's law and all that sort of thing. But it's just really a good, it's a good way of being. It's your intent that matters to us, not, if you want to be rich or you want to have love or you want to have power, these are all perfectly acceptable things. What we say is find a way of doing it without intentionally stepping on people's backs on the way. You don't use people, you don't manipulate people, you don't create harm, you don't need to. True power is a thing of its own. It doesn't need to take. It just is.
No, and if you worship cruelty
I
for
hate
the sake
this chord.
If you worship cruelty for the sake of cruelty, you're either a psychopath or a fascist. So these people who are obsessed with, crapping all over the Wiccan Reed or whatever because it's not real crap law.
I curse people.
Exactly. I hex people. Be scared of me.
First of all,
okay, nobody's scared of you.
If you were really a good cursor, you wouldn't be talking about it.
No, you'd be dead silent about it.
Yes.
To know, to will, to dare, to be silent.
And death curses are stupid. If I was going to torment someone, I'd want them to live a very long time.
It's like Cersei Lannister. You're not going to die today. You're not going to die for a long time.
Do you know I sent that monologue to a ton of people on accident?
He sent it to me at 3:00 in the morning one time from Game of Thrones,
we won't
where
talk
she's
about
torturing a nun.
It was a monologue I did about her torturing a monk, and
Am I in trouble?
I somehow sent it to so many people, and I don't know what I did.
Great.
Don't know what I did.
Still in a great image. But yeah, no.
I'm not very technologically savvy, and I realize Facebook isn't considered technology.
Don't hurt people for fun.
Don't hurt people for fun.
And this whole thing, witchcraft goes
Karen's
through aesthetic
never
phases.
hurt anyone for fun.
They know each other. Witchcraft and paganism and magic go through aesthetic phases. Wouldn't you agree?
No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't hurt
Oh my
people
God. Sorry. But no, like for example, in the 90s, it was all Celtic. Remember that? And now nobody talks about that hardly.
Well,
and
some
now
people
all,
still do.
Black skulls on the altar and cursing and hexing. Great.
Oh, good, we've got time still. You haven't asked me a question yet. Ask me a question.
I asked you one in the beginning, didn't I?
No, you've had questions. Or should I ask you a question?
Well, you can ask me one, but then we have one here, but you can ask. You can do yours first, and then I'll take that one.
How has initiation changed you?
Oh, I like this one. In a lot of ways, I think it separates people who, like the comment that was made earlier in the show, somebody comparing it to holy orders versus just dedication. It made me a priest. And that's my number one identifier now, and it sort of trumps a lot of other things in my life in a very real way. And it makes it very hard sometimes to engage with the mundane world because I am on this different trajectory where I'm more interested in the numinous, more interested in bettering myself, more interested in finding this truth that I know exists and I kept glimpses of, sort of like the Zen concept of Satori, right? Like you get a little bit of nirvana, a little bit at a time, right?
We actually have a public ritual after this.
We do.
We literally have to turn this into a temple. And
we do.
Do this.
Looking around, I'm a little bit nervous about that.
We're going to pull it out.
We're going to do great.
And then we're going to potions afterwards for a little bit of a soiree.
We're not.
No, we actually are.
I know you are. We're going to talk about this.
Blessed be.
I cannot stand all. I have to be here for pictures in the morning.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
You need new pictures, or I'm going to use one of those fat ones. They've got pictures. There's a bit of a competition. Oh, by the way, should our class? I thought 2 subjects. I'll let you pick for everyone now. Next week, do we do curses or do we do labels?
Labels, like the word witch?
Labels like
the word witch.
Witch.
Yeah,
or
witch
or
cursing and hexing. I'm going to not be fun on the cursing and hexing one because I'm so over this aesthetic right now of every single Facebook post.
So we want to do labels next week?
But, no, I'll do it. I'm just saying.
Which one do you want to do? Pick. You can't make a decision.
Oh, I have to pick? I thought you said let them pick.
No, you.
Oh, I have to pick.
Yes.
Let's do labels, but I want us to talk about how we're going to word that because I want it to be like...
Yeah, we'll call it something other than labels.
I like that. Yeah. But we're talking about words.
Oh, they're all saying labels. Oh, yeah. Except for Barbara. Barbara, we will do the curses.
We're going to do it eventually. Yeah. And I want to do one on the gods, too. We've got a lot of topics.
Gods. Yeah.
What was I talking about? Was that
important? I got bored.
You asked me why did initiation change me. It made me a priest.
Oh.
I care about things more. I feel more expansive, more open to new things, more like I'm on a journey.
The craft will use anyone to survive, Levi.
Great. So even the likes of you was the like statement just snuck right in there. Even your trashy ass. Shade. We need a shade button on here. I don't have a button that's just about shade, but just saying.
All in good time, my little pretty. All in good time.
He's an evil bitch. If I have tea, you want to talk about you got shade, I got tea. Okay, I got more tea than Lipton.
We haven't spoken very much about Alexandrian craft and initiation, Levi. What is your opinion about how would you describe the 3 degrees of Alexandrian initiation?
Ooh, you want me to say it publicly? Like when I think
if you were just going to give it a clarifier, like, what's different about it, or what are your
One
thoughts?
of the things I think is you will sometimes find in Gardnerian materials, and this is not shade to them because it very much depends on the line. This might be an American
We
thing.
actually like
I love them.
Gardnerians
Big fan.
more than any other kind of witches. They're inferior to us, but we think they are superior to everyone else.
No, that's a horrible way to put that.
Some of them
I
will
hate
like
you
that.
the least. that's as nice as we get in witchcraft. I hate you the least.
I
do.
actually know some
It's like,
Gardnerian.
my God, you
I
talk to
like
Gardnerians-
Jason Mankey and his wife Ari. Actually,
Oh,
I
lovely.
love his wife. She could probably make me heterosexual. She's
Nice. Okay,
She's rich.
wow. Shout out
she's
to
rich. She's beautiful, and she's mean. She might
his
be
favorite
meaner
things.
than me.
His favorite
She
things.
might be.
Money,
Watch out, Jason.
pretty,
Watch out.
hateful.
I like her quite a lot. I like Patricia Crowther.
Yeah, she was
I mean,
awesome.
I've never
loved
met
Rain,
her.
but-
Don't think she'd like us.
But what I was going to say is there are writings in the Gardnerian ones that
Yeah.
kind of say you're not a real priest or a real witch until the second or thirds. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
That's very complicated, I think.
Wow.
Because you asked me to split them out into the
Go ahead.
threes.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
Oh, you're
Go ahead.
fine. You're fine. I mean, banter's important. I think,
Blessed be.
blessed be. What I would want to say publicly about this, because I'm going through some
got
things
to
right
drink
now
first, then,
in
so.
my church. So I think anybody who's initiated, regardless of degree, is a priest or a priestess or a witch. You're all of those things, period. I don't think you should take higher degrees. I think there's a danger today of thinking the higher degree is something you have to do.
No, a lot of people shouldn't do it.
Agreed. You should only do it if you want to teach. You should only do it if you want to and have the ability and the capacity to teach and run a coven.
We are a bit different because, you're not done yet. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you can. That's my biggest belief about it.
Uh,
There is no shame in being a first
No,
degree.
no.
You are a fully fledged witch and
I
priest.
have known and met some, and I'll call them elders, even though they're first degrees. Elders, witches that were people who knew Alex, who are still first degrees, and they are my elder. And they're only still first degrees because they never wanted to go on to become a high priest or high priestess. One of the things we do is we typically do not separate out the 3 degrees. There's still 3 separate rituals, but we tend to put the second and third together because we treat it like 2 sides of a coin. You're either not a teacher or you are a teacher. You're either a priest or priestess or you're a high priest or high
Avoids
priestess.
carrot and stick situations too.
I have been told that Gardner actually had this attitude and that all of his initial priestesses were initiated in this way. I don't really know if it's true, but I have been told that there was a lot of zipping up going on. So Alex may have been carrying on an original practice that he was aware of.
Yeah, he could have been.
He did separate the degrees twice, with Janet and Stuart Farrar and with another person not of note. Well, to most people, I know who he is, but most people wouldn't know.
Yeah. Not a public figure. I get what you're saying.
Yes, not a public figure. So I think, it can happen, but it just doesn't tend to. So Patricia Crowther was the one that called the second degree of initiation proper. And that's because there's certain things that go on there that cement,
Yeah, absolutely.
cement what you're doing. However, no, first degree is a witch, and you do not need to go on to do anything else. You don't have to. And, most won't. There are a lot of people who want to or think they should. A lot of people
Not for
come to
title
a coven
alone.
or come to a temple, they get their first degree thinking they're going to go through this little ritual and they're going to, and they're going to get the Book of Shadows and they're going to learn all they can and they're going to elevate. What ends up happening is they're actually initiated. So their life goes whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. and all these things happen to them, and they start to become transformed because that's what they've asked.
Yep.
A lot of times
Careful
they'll
what you wish
leave. A lot of times they won't. A lot of times they won't continue. They've been initiated. We don't know. Most people in Alexandrian craft, as I have been told, a wide net was cast. There have been lots of people initiated to the first degree in Alexandrian craft. Alex handed out first degrees like candy. However, he did not do that for the second and third. And that's part of the reason why we do it. It's extreme for us. So we will wait at least
to give the higher
usually
degrees.
3 years, 2 to 3 years before the higher degree on most circumstances. Doesn't mean it always happens. But, it's not... I know people who've waited 9 years for their second and third.
17.
Or 18. Yeah. What Karen said, she knows more first and thirds, of course.
As you should.
Yeah.
Just like you know more lay Catholics than you know bishops.
Yeah. It's a job too. That's what you have to remember. It's not a...
Do you want to know something interesting that I think is an analogy here? People, somebody who used to be a very devout Catholic, there is something about the Catholic Church everybody gets wrong. What do you think makes a cardinal or the Pope more powerful than a bishop? It's a trick question.
Politics.
Exactly. They're not. In the Catholic Church, the highest position is bishop. There is nothing above it. The Pope is literally just the Bishop of Rome.
Yeah.
So, and of course, there's whole things about papal infallibility and whatnot. But the real answer is there is really just bishop. And so
I'm not more powerful. I'm just...
it's
have
a mistake.
ruby. I have rubies.
That's called just having money, honey.
Not just money. I actually designed this too.
You did. It's very pretty. I love it. I wear one. Mine's silver. Today I wore the Baphomet.
Now, when you get elevated, which some people don't like, are you going to get to ruby?
Should I? Should I don myself?
Should you?
Should I gild myself? No, I wore the Baphomet today just to spite you for telling me that we don't really worship the devil.
The Baphomet is...
It's not really the devil. I'm aware. Eliphas Levi.
Baptized by wisdom. Yeah. Well, I think it actually is a witchcraft symbol.
Oh, I do too, but I'm saying it's not Satan.
No, it's definitely
before I
not
get
Satan.
A bunch of comments.
Nobody worships
the Baphomet's
Satan here.
not... I know.
And the
but
devil,
it kind of is.
The devil is no more Satan than Lucifer is Satan. They're different words.
Yeah, and they've had very different cultural.
But that's a different
show. My favorite one. Okay, so we do have a question in Crowdcast. Sorry that it took so long to get to. Would you work to heal someone out of favor with your coven or other public figures? I mean, can I say what you've trained me as my high priest? You don't heal people who don't ask for it. Do we? Isn't that supposed to be asked first? It's like an ethics thing, right?
Well, usually when it comes to other witches, you should be asked. We won't always ask if we. Here's what I would teach people in being trained is if you don't know exactly what's wrong, it's very dangerous to sometimes get involved, because you could blast somebody with healing that's not actually going to be beneficial for them. The thing that people need to realize is that we take this extremely seriously because it works, and it's not safe. Hence why we wouldn't put it in the hands of an extremely deranged person. It's not safe, and people can hurt themselves and they can hurt other people on accident. So with witches, usually, yes, we do. If I wanted to be healed by other witches, I would ask. I've got my own healers. I've got people I know I don't want people mucking about.
Yeah.
For God's sakes. If I die, I don't want anyone to know about it for a year, Levi, because all these people will say they were my friends and talk about me on Facebook with all these pictures.
It's really simple. He had no
don't.
friends. It's much easier to just realize that.
I had a couple very worthy ones.
I love it. It's like, I've had one or two. And how old are you? How many years?
Levi.
I'm kidding. Okay, so I do want to...
would we heal someone out of favor? Would we heal someone the Coven doesn't like? That's a very strange question.
I hate you, but I want to help you.
Probably not.
Very Christian.
I think
Right.
that, I don't think that's
Turn
a
the
very
other
logical
cheek.
question.
Get the hell out of my house.
Not out of malice, but if we don't like someone, we're not going to be thinking about them. Now, if they came to us and said, please heal me,
Yeah, of course.
we probably would. We're not a healing coven. We have healed, but that's not our major role by
Yeah.
any means. Find healing quite boring, really.
Helping people. God, what a bore. Shit. I've got more important things to do. I gotta tell you, So somebody asked one in the chat.
It depends on their crimes.
I know, right? I love that. Somebody said it depends on their crimes on whether or not you're gonna
This
help.
is why this is my bestie.
I know, right? Somebody asked a question. I do want to give them a shout out and answer it. How do you decide when someone goes to the next degree? Because there's 3 degrees, just in case you missed. We do have 3 degrees in traditional witchcraft. So how do you decide that somebody goes to the next degrees?
Well, I could pull a Maxine and say I'm not prepared to answer that question. Not saying she would say that about that question.
Through aggressive
But-
alcoholism and favoritism.
Well, actually,
I'm kidding.
there are a few things. One, I ask myself, is this person a lifer? Meaning I look at this individual and I say, this person's going to stay with Alexandrian craft for the rest of their life. This person is an Alexandrian high priest or high priestess material. They're not going to go running off and be a magician. They're not going to go run off and do voodoo. They're not going to get bored and start their own tradition. This
Hare Krishna.
person,
So many options.
this person is full on. They're a lifer. So that's a huge thing. Then it's the same things you ask about anything. And, do they have the knowledge? Do they know their rituals? Before someone's elevated, I know some people don't like the word elevated, but it
Take the second and thirds. Then,
works. Before they're initiated into those higher degrees, they have to demonstrate a certain amount of knowledge and proficiency in magic. They must have proven that their magic can work. We actually have to have seen it manifest in more than one style, as well as they have to have a really full understanding of the Book of Shadows and be able to perform any of the rituals incorporated therein. They have to be extremely proficient ritualists, and then they are given a test circle as well to prove this as the final thing. It's kind of like someone asks for elevation, the second, third, and if we say yes, they're pointed a test circle, and it's kind of like RuPaul's Drag Race. This is your last chance to impress me. Lip sync for your life. Don't fuck it up. And they go through a ritual.
Immortal occult
and
words.
we watch that ritual because we already know at that point that this is a good ritualist, or we wouldn't have agreed. But if something really goes terribly wrong in that, it might be a sign. We're looking for signs and omens. Just like when somebody asks for their first degree, we look for them to bail out. If somebody asks for the first degree and we say yes, there's a timetable. If they bail out, it's an omen they were not meant to be. Or if something happens to tell us, no, this is not the right person. We do believe the gods will intercede if we look long enough. One of my first teachers wrote a poem for me, and in that poem she said, if a mask is held up, it will fall away quicker in the presence of a steady gaze. So we watch. They're under a microscope. But, one of the questions I ask is, training is extremely important in my lineage from my teacher and the people that I've passed it down to. Training is extremely important to us. That is that they have to know what they're doing. They have to know the Alexandrian system, and they have to be able to show that they can communicate that to others and that they can facilitate to each other. Because just because you know it doesn't mean you can actually facilitate it. People make mistakes. There have been people who've been initiated or elevated that maybe shouldn't have been or were prematurely done, but somehow it will work itself out. If they're not right, they just won't get students or they won't succeed. Just like if they're not right for the first degree, they'll end up wandering off or getting pissed about something. It's just is what it is.
It's different, I agree.
But I think I'm extremely strict.
So before I ask, there's a
To say this,
question here.
I've actually only elevated of my own training one person so far. Levi will be number 2. So we are very, very strict. I've assisted with other people's elevations, but they were not of my training. In my training, it's been 1, soon to be 2. And he's passed his test circle already, so it's full on good.
Yes, looking forward to it. With all the trials and tribulations.
Enjoy.
I know, right? two things.
You get
before-
this bullshit. You get this.
Big fan. Guild me. Two things. Number one is before I answer, great question.
I
here.
should rephrase that, actually.
What?
Let me rephrase that. I actually have done more than the two because I've,
I see. I know what you're talking about.
You know, Karen, I'm going to out you out there. Karen is the third degree Alexandrian priestess. But the reason I didn't think about it was because she came with me from my old tradition and became Alexandrian later. So, it's more of my past, but she, technically speaking, there's been 3.
Yeah.
Or will be 3 when you.
Yeah. Blessed be Karen.
Yeah, blessed be. Sorry, Karen.
Two questions
Thinking
are in
in this
Crowdcast
world.
that I really like. The first one I think we can answer very quickly because I feel like we're going to have a pretty similar answer. What is your opinion on online training? I'm going to say it's...
Online, what do you mean by online training?
I think they mean You
mean Alexandrian online training or online training period?
I think there's 2 points to this. Number one is, if you're talking about a school online where you pay for classes, that's fine. I have nothing against that in the grand scheme, but it's not Alexander, it's not Gardnerian, and it can never be, period.
No, it doesn't work.
But if you're talking about somebody who might have been initiated and then there's distance involved because they had to move away or whatever, then we could use Skype or whatever to train with someone.
I actually can give you a really good thing.
Yeah.
I have developed a bit of a system for long distance training based on the necessity of being in that situation.
Yeah.
However, it can only go so far. I think that you can train people to some degree that way, but unfortunately, a huge part of our, we like to say it's, there's 2 methods of thought, Apollonic, Dionysian. And our religion is more Dionysian, really. It's more Dionysian. It's not
in the flesh. Yeah.
We have aspects of it that are Pollyannic, that are in the mind, but we are more Dionysian. So it's actually the experience of being in a ritual. And it's not just showing up to the ritual, it's a being in the ritual. And so there are certain things that you just can't teach online. I don't think that our craft was meant to be taught long distance.
It has to be.
So anyone who is being taught from a distance, which I would be very reticent to do again, would be someone who, still had to travel. There still has to be, you still have to show up. You're not going to get your second and third from most people living in another city without some travel. You know what I mean? It has happened, but being where the Coven is where you're going to get the experience you need.
That's distance.
For that.
But if you're talking about like the online schools of witchcraft, again, I'm not putting any shade out
if you're
there
just talking about like what we're doing now, we're teaching you for free now.
I think they're talking more about the ones where you can pay and go through a system.
I will
That's
say,
fine,
and
but it's
Christian
not
might
us.
get mad at me for this, but there was that horrid thing called Witch School. Don Frew person or whatever.
No, thank you.
Well, I don't know. I think that thing's an abomination.
But I think I agree. I mean, I think we answered. Also, I've got another great question on Crowdcast. If you are watching on Crowdcast, please remember to subscribe. You get notifications. You'll get all kinds of alerts. If you're watching on YouTube, whatever's happening here, follow on Crowdcast.
It's legal.
Subscribe on
I'm
YouTube.
a guy. It's great to be a guy. It looks like
This
I've
is-
got like this weird thing going on here.
Brian, Jesus.
It's
like having
legal. I can
My
do it.
high priest is Tara Reid. And not good Tara Reid, like when it went downhill. You know what I mean? I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. So, good question here.
That button cherry.
Have another cherry, darling. Witches of Eastwick. The book is horrible, by the way. It's pure misogyny. Updike was not my favorite.
Just like our life.
Okay, so a good question. Because it should be a quick answer because we kind of covered this before, Russell. But Russell's asking, some covens can prefer second and third at the same time. Some separate them.
Yes.
Do you want to clarify again what we do about that real quick?
Yes. Okay. So you'll often hear Gardnerians separate them and Alexandrians put them together. Alex and Maxine put them together. That was the original training. Most Gardnerians, especially today, separate them. But some Alexandrians separate them now too. Some Alexandrians are just really trying to be Gardnerians. But, it is what it is. And it's fine. It's up to each coven. You can separate them. You can put them together. It's up to you. We put them together because the second degree is a very strange ritual for a fertility cult. And we do not want to leave that individual in that sphere of existence if it's not necessary. But initiations happen for different people for different reasons. For some people, it is necessary.
Yep.
So there's an intentional magical reason behind the reason why Alexandrians do it differently. For those of us who are trained, the big thing people need to understand is that when I talk about the differences between Alexandrian and Gardnerian, I think a lot of people think it's, do you stand on your left foot or your right? You know, do you bow? Do you use a wand? What's going on? You know, these little details. You wear a white robe. You don't wear anything. You know, or whatever's going on.
Yeah.
You know, which we're quite often naked, by the way. But
Hey, Mom.
it's actually not that at all. It's the philosophical belief and the way we approach the craft that is extremely different. You know, it's literally looking at the craft through a different lens. So it is actually more about, it's kind of like saying that Catholics and Protestants are the same thing. You know, yes, they both come from the
They're
same
Christians, right?
You know,
Yeah.
the same God, they worship the same God, you know, blah, blah, blah. But then you look at, you know,
I wouldn't put us as far apart as Catholics and Protestants.
Not as
I'd
far.
say Catholics and Orthodox. Catholic and
Yes.
Eastern Orthodox.
yes,
That's really
or
what it's
Greek
like.
Orthodox.
That's what I mean.
maybe
Greek
even.
Orthodox and Catholic.
Yes,
Like,
we're
way
he's right.
closer.
That's way more of a, you know, which honestly speaking, Greek Orthodoxes are probably more legitimate than
just because we use more incense and have more pretty icons.
No, it's that they actually probably are more legitimate. than
They're
Catholics.
older, definitely, in terms of
I learned
papal,
a lot about that recently.
Yeah, the papal
But
thing is a bit later.
yes, no, that's a better. You know, we're not Protestants for Christ's sake. That would be the pagan part of people, probably.
Yeah, like modern non-initiatory witchcraft would be the Protestants.
Yes, we're not you.
They don't like the Pope.
No, we like our ritual. We like our rituals because we're fucking practicing witchcraft, people.
Big fan.
Just saying. We like rituals. We like
Yeah.
good rituals.
Yeah.
Just saying.
So I think one of the, because I think we are
Definitely
rapidly
buzzed now.
approaching the end. I
No,
think
not quite yet.
it's we've
Not rapidly.
our timer's right here. See,
well, not rapidly.
Yeah.
We've got like 10 minutes.
it is. But I wanted to.
Do we have any? We never had any video call-ins.
We could have.
Didn't
We
even
could've.
offer. No one offered.
We could have. People get. I mean, I understand. You're a little
Make
nervous.
sure I didn't have any. Well, I understand.
might have
Well, it's
yours.
also in video too.
Yeah.
So hold on, let me check. I don't think people are going to ask questions on Facebook.
We had a signal in here, we could bring them in by the phone.
We could. I like the phone.
Nobody
call
asks
idea.
questions on Facebook. It's not the place for questions.
Mhm. But we
Ronaldo,
got a lot of
why
great
didn't you
ones here.
call in? I don't know if he's still there.
You're
No,
not
we're
on
all-
the right Facebook.
What?
He's not on the right Facebook.
We'll get it. We'll
Or
get it
I'm not on the
eventually.
right Facebook.
Right, you're on.
We'll fix it. He's got a watch party. We're gonna. Don't worry. We see you. And we got a lot of.
I thought he
fantastic
was on
questions.
there. It just isn't showing any questions. I'm on my personal page. Well, anyway.
Yeah, we got a lot of great questions on.
Let's
Crowdcast.
summarize this, shall we?
Done.
We didn't ask a lot of questions. All right. Levi, do you think that not being politically correct, I'm going to ask you to not be politically correct.
Great.
Do you think someone is a witch if they're not initiated?
I have to give an honest opinion here. Within our context, no. If you're talking about if you're talking about the revival of witchcraft that stems from Gerald Gardner, then no, they're not. If you're talking about the concept of priest, they're not a priest. If you're talking about the concept of, they're just not an initiate by definition. But if you mean, are we the only people who should or can use the word witch? That cat is out of the bag.
Well, that's more for the label show.
Yeah.
Just because we use the same name doesn't
Don't mean the
mean
same
we
thing.
mean the same thing. I think early on, and that's not shade. I think that early on, even with Christian, I think that there was a sort of a thing that came up, that was, he used to ask me, about my opinions on this, and I would always say, what
How
do you
much
mean?
are you worth?
What do you mean by witch? Or what is their definition of witch? So, witch is a very, it's been used in so many different ways. So it's really complicated to say, let's all have a conversation using this word that's used in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
You've got people out there now going, I'm into traditional witchcraft. What they're saying is a joke to me. It's not traditional witchcraft. It's some. I know what they're saying. I understand the label. It's kind of like the word Wicca. one of the reasons I don't like the word Wicca in its modern context is because there are so many people who are basically the park pagans who are identifying with this religion of Wicca. They call themselves Wiccans, which, by the way, initiates never say Wiccan.
Never.
It's not ever anywhere. That's a plural. It's really weird. Or the Wiccan religion.
Never.
It's not our thing.
Never heard an initiation.
Wicca is an old word for witch. It's all it's ever been to initiates. We've never divided them to. You've got some Americans now who have jumped onto the, because of the labels, they've jumped onto, and this once again from the show.
Yeah, that'll be the whole label.
They've jumped onto, this is what people think it means, so I'm going to use that language. We do. Be kind of like why I don't use the word pagan. People might get confused by that. Well, because I'm not trying to reconstruct a dead culture. I don't represent a culture. I don't represent a pre-Christian culture.
We're not
I do represent the pre-Christian mystery cults, but in a modern lens. So, I look at witchcraft through the lens of a mystery cult. I don't look at it through the lens of a culture. It's not the same for everyone, but that's how it is for me and probably most educated initiates.
Yeah, I don't think, I agree with you. If we're not using the word in the same way, what's the point?
Labels are not, just because you say something doesn't make it the same thing. Especially when you're talking about the occult and paganism, you've got people say pagan, they've got different ideas of that. People say witch, different ideas of that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, what are you using that word to mean?
So I support the old craft thing under, if you're not initiated, you're not an Alexandrian or Gardnerian witch, which at one point in time was the only definition of witchcraft. Now people want to use it for other things, spellcasting, other cultures.
And we're going to get on to all of that.
It's a different story.
It's, we have
thoughts. Yes, there's a certain level in which I think if you want to be a part of the Western heritage of witchcraft, if you want to be involved in the Western heritage of witchcraft, the Western occult heritage of witchcraft that is, working on being 100 years old traceable, if you want to be a part of that, you should seek initiation into Gardnerian and Alexandrian craft. However, if witchcraft means something else to you, well, then we're not talking about the same thing anyway.
Yeah. So, it's not even...
We might have things in common, but we're not talking about the same thing. So,
yeah.
I did wish I could have got onto the subject of medieval witchcraft and possible historical...
I want to do that one for either the devil one or the labels one.
Didn't get there, not enough time.
Because I think it has a little bit more to do
with
it
subject
than just initiation, right? I think that one's huge.
Anyway, we're going to say adieu for the evening.
We are.
Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed. We didn't even scratch the surface.
We did not.
Really. I thought we were going to talk about so many things we didn't talk about, but it just is what it is.
It is what it is.
Hopefully we said something that made goddamn sense, because we're goddamn ready.
Wow. Blessed be.
Blessed be.
But remember, initiation's not just about us. It's not just one ritual.
No.
It is an entry into something very numinous, very powerful. And if you don't want to do your religion as a hobby anymore, eventually it becomes necessary. What is it Alex said? It's not even a debate about whether it's necessary or important. It becomes the way because in the end it is the only way.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
There were covens in Europe. That's what they're called. The congregation. Covens in Europe, in America, and in Australia, and they